Hello, I'm Natasha Hussein, and this is Newsfeed, your dose of what people are talking about online. The war in Sudan has been raging for almost a year now. Intense clashes between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have killed over 13,000 people. More than 9 million people are displaced in their own country, and the United Nations has described the suffering as epic. The visuals you are seeing now are from Omdurman, the sister city of the capital Khartoum. Once bustling and vibrant, it's now largely deserted and destroyed. More than half of Khartoum's 6.5 million people have fled. The city has become a dusty war zone as the rival armies fight for control. Those that remain are subject to airstrikes, bombardments, and street combat. But if you live in Sudan, you're unlikely to see these images because internet connectivity is often completely cut, or when there is signal, it's patchy and erratic. Momen explains how the inability to connect in this digital age is affecting people in the war-ravaged country.
About 3 weeks ago, Sudan has experienced one of the worst internet and telecommunication outages in its recent history. All the Sudanese states have gone out of service. People were really suffering here in Sudan. You can imagine that the majority of firms, banks, and also government institutions were closed due to this outage. Really, the Sudanese people, everyday life was paralyzed.
This blackout has greatly affected our lives. For example, I cannot obtain a passport, and most businesses have also stopped. This situation is unacceptable, and we condemn this act because it has caused great harm to our lives and affected businesses and even travel.
We have many cases of psychiatric patients in 9 states, and we have been following up on their cases via WhatsApp, but now we can't reach them. We had several online training courses and conferences on psychotherapy, but we were unable to attend due to this outage. The internet blackout also affected our communication with our donors outside Sudan, and we have requested an extension until we can communicate again.
Sudani, one of 3 operators, 3 internet and communication operators here in Sudan, was able to restore its services in the states that are controlled by the Sudanese army. This internet company, Sudani, is very feeble. People here until now cannot communicate well with their loved ones and with their family. Also, before the restoration of this network, people were really suffering of a cash crisis because for more than 10 days, people weren't able to get their savings from the banks. Even banks' headquarters in Port Sudan, which is the alternative capital, were closed.
Internet shutdowns are not unique to Sudan. We've seen it in Gaza, Senegal, Myanmar, and during the recent elections in Pakistan. The tactic is deliberate, and cutting off the immediate spread of news allows governments to operate with impunity and hide atrocities.
We've already seen what happens when there are internet blockades for 1 to 3 days. I cannot imagine for 3 weeks. It's crazy to think that in a world where we all have access to our phones and internet and can connect this way, no one or very few people are alarmed by the fact that Sudan is in an internet shutdown.
Sudan has become a living nightmare. Almost half of the population, 25 million people, are in urgent need of food and medical aid. Some 80% of hospitals have been put out of service. The apparently deliberate denial of safe and unimpeded access for humanitarian agencies within Sudan itself constitutes a serious violation of international law and may amount to war crime.
Apart from being displaced in their own country, many have fled to fragile neighboring states like Chad, the Central African Republic, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. Some of these countries are fighting their own civil wars or are recovering from them. The UN is worried that the conflict in Sudan will worsen regional instability, and apart from the looting of crucial aid and the senseless killing of civilians by both sides, The UN says that rape is being used as a weapon of war. Since the fighting started in April, the UN has documented dozens of incidents of rape against women and girls, though it fears most incidents are going unreported and the figures could be much, much higher. But despite glaring injustices and atrocities, the conflict in Gaza has overshadowed the war in Sudan.
True that this need has been eclipsed by the war in Gaza. It is a right war also in Gaza and also in Ukraine. There are so many atrocities committed by militia against the people, against the foreign diplomatic missions, embassies and UN offices, against everything, institutions, infrastructure. There is a very big magnitude of destruction in the country.
A prisoner in California known as Hamza, who donated his earnings from his 13-cent per hour janitor job to Gaza relief efforts, received something even bigger in kind. His act of solidarity went viral after being shared by filmmaker Justin Mashouf. Mashouf revealed Hamza's donation through photos of his October time log, showing 21 days of work totaling 136.5 hours, along with a check for $17.74. Convicted of second-degree murder in 1986 at the age of 16, Hamza has spent over 4 decades in prison. He converted to Islam and sought parole for years. After learning of Hamza's heartfelt donation, Mashouf launched a GoFundMe campaign for him, raising over $102,000 for his re-entry into society. However, Hamza, who is set to be released this month, has decided to suspend the campaign, urging people to redirect their generosity to the suffering people of Palestine, Yemen, and the African continent. Meanwhile, Israel has buckled to pressure, agreeing to revise the lyrics of a song submitted for this year's Eurovision Song Contest.
And we'll rise up, high like the waves, we'll rise up, in spite of the ache, we'll rise up, and we'll do it.
Eden Golan's ballad October Rain was barred last week by Eurovision's organizer for breaking its rules on political neutrality. Its lyrics reference the Hamas attack on October 7th. Four-time Eurovision winner Israel had previously rejected calls to change the lyrics, but on Sunday it announced it's submitting a new entry called Hurricane about a young woman surviving a personal crisis. Prior to this controversy, there'd already been a growing boycott campaign against Eurovision for allowing Israel to participate. Petitions calling for Israel to be disqualified drew tens of thousands of signatures online. Musicians from Iceland, Finland, Denmark, and host country Sweden also signed open letters calling for the Israeli entry to be pulled. The contest is being called out for its double standards for expelling Russia in 2022 for the war in Ukraine, but not doing the same with Israel this year. Violence against women in India is in the spotlight once again after a Brazilian tourist was allegedly gang raped in the country's east. Police have arrested at least 3 men and are searching for others in the Jharkhand state. The woman and her husband, who are popular travel vloggers, had set up a tent for the night when they were attacked by a group of men. The couple were later found by patrolling police officers and brought to a nearby hospital. They later posted about the assault on Instagram. The pair had been on a motorbike tour of the region, concluding a trip to Sri Lanka before the Indian leg of their journey. The case, which has led to outrage across the country, highlights India's decades-long struggle to curb sexual violence against women. Amid criticism online over India's poor safety record, the couple have been swift to tell their followers not to pass judgment on the country so quickly.
Y no penséis que India es así. India es un gran país. Es un gran país y vale la pena visitarlo con sus cosas buenas y sus cosas malas. Y eso ha sido un incidente. Y no eso nos tiene que dejar el recuerdo de un país malo, no es así. Y gracias a la policía y a todo el mundo.
La gente, los indianos son buena gente, hemos pues chocado con...
Unos indeseables que lo que esperamos es que se mueran en la cárcel.
Pero no hay que generalizarlo, la policía está haciendo todo lo que puede, así que...
Muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias a todos y aquí estamos esperando.
8 months ahead of the U.S. general election, President Joe Biden faces a challenging path, trailing former President Donald Trump in polls among likely voters. This setback comes as 73% of registered voters expressed concerns about Biden's age, with many questioning the 81-year-old president's mental competency. With the election potentially hinged on slim margins in swing states, any shifts in voter support could be decisive. The poll reveals that 82% of voters in key swing states view Biden as too old for the presidency. Biden, the oldest president ever to seek re-election, is just 4 years older than his expected challenger, Trump. Trump is also facing age-related doubts, but only from 42% of registered voters. Both candidates are grappling with low popularity ratings, with Trump at 44% favorable rating and Biden at 37%, underscoring the challenging road ahead for both contenders. 97% of 2020 Trump supporters intend to back him again, compared to Biden's 85% retention rate among his 2020 voters, with 9% indicating a shift to Trump. In the Times Siena survey, Trump leads Biden by 48% to 44% among likely voters. It's clear the voters aren't exactly looking forward to the upcoming election, especially those on the Democratic side of the aisle. So it's not surprising to see activists, NGOs, and even brands pulling out new tricks to get people to register to vote. In one brand's case, its campaign involves arguably the most famous White House intern.
Monica Lewinsky entered her adulthood as a White House intern fresh out of college. But the door to more career opportunities quickly shut when she was branded as that woman. Lewinsky was central to the impeachment saga of then President Bill Clinton. She lived her young adult years in constant shame.
Overnight, I went from being a completely private figure to a publicly humiliated one. I was patient zero. The first person to have their reputation completely destroyed worldwide via the internet.
For years, she was the constant punchline of inappropriate jokes. But with the changing times, the public eventually warmed to Lewinsky, seeing her for what she was, a young woman who was taken advantage of with disproportionate power dynamics, a victim. Since then, she has built up quite the career as a writer who occasionally won the internet over with sarcastic tweets, a producer exposing the harms of online shaming, and an anti-bullying activist drawing from her own experiences.
And I get it. It was easy to forget that that woman was dimensional, had a soul, and was once unbroken.
Now Lewinsky is back as a fashion model at the age of 50. The activist is embracing her power in a workwear collection by the American brand Reformation. As to why it chose her as its face, Reformation says, Monica's been empowering women to use their voices and feel powerful for a long time, so it just makes sense that she'd help us do the same. Her debut fashion campaign has a point to make. It reminds women that they've got the power, and all they need to show it is to remember to vote.
And that's our show. Find our latest stuff on YouTube and do subscribe to our channel. See you soon.